Thanks for staying with As It Happens. My guest tonight is EFF leader Julius Malema, and we continue our conversation. Before we went to the break, Julius, we were speaking about, revolution and how you see it as the answer basically to the country's current problems. Is it a convenient message for you to warn about an impending unled revolution, given that ultimately it plays into what you would want to see achieved in this country by your own statement made before the break?
Well, we are for the revolution. We are in the revolution, and we are conscientizing society. This is what we want to achieve, and we don't hide it. We're not conducting a secret society. We're a legitimate political formation that seeks to bring about radical change. And radical change on its own is a revolution. It can be done in an orderly manner. It can be done in a manner that it is not disastrous to the economy of our republic.
Which examples would you be looking at for that?
Well, we don't have to necessarily get examples. We have to have a conviction. But we've got a situation where the people, for instance, in Zimbabwe, have got their own land, and they are successfully working the land without being under the supervision of those who used to own the land before. We've got a situation in China where the strategic means of production, including the land, is owned by the state. And therefore, there is no really a disaster for the Chinese economy. The most countries that threatens to leave South Africa if we do certain things are actually operating in China itself.
What about democracy and civil liberties? Because there's a different conversation to be made about the economy. I don't think that you and I would necessarily agree, especially in Zimbabwe. But what about democracy?
But what is our point of disagreement, for instance, in Zimbabwe? You cannot want to measure the success of the Zimbabwean revolution based on a capitalist definition of success. The Zimbabweans themselves, I'm saying to you, production has doubled. They are working their land. We need to respect, of course, the civil rights of our people. We must respect the individual rights of our people. People must exercise their democratic rights without any form of terror or intimidation coming from the state. Is that
secondary for you?
It's primary. For anything to prevail, individuals must exercise their rights. That's what I'm saying to you. In the narrative that we are advocating for, no one speaks about pulling away the civil rights of any other individual. All we're saying is that let's share in the resources of our country. But the Constitution, which guarantees individuals' rights, should be protected, and those rights should be protected as well.
So as you see it, Zimbabwe is still a model after which...
No, we're talking about Zimbabwe in the context of land ownership and ownership of strategic means of production in that country. Of course, when it comes to the rights, there were some form of violations. I spoke about, or against them rather. When I was in Zimbabwe, I shocked one of the rallies of ZANU-PF where I said cutting people's hands, beating up people, torturing people is not the future. We ought to exist in a democratic manner and win people through the power of persuasion, not through terror.
There's no question about the fact that all political parties are thinking about 2019, the elections coming up. What's your strategy going into the election?
Well, our strategy is that we have to speak to our people. We have to make sure that each and every house must be visited. Every registered voter must be known to the EFF, and they must be spoken to. We've got an approach in the EFF that says even people who are well-known supporters of different political formations, we must speak to them, because most political parties in South Africa are in conflict with themselves. Their own members and supporters are not happy. You don't know what you'll get from talking to those people. So our strategy is that motu, you must never let a person pass. That died to than let the enemy pass. So that's what Mugabe taught us. We must always ensure that we speak to our people. People can't vote for something they don't know. They have to know that there is an alternative called the EFF. That's how the ANC kept on defeating other political parties. Sure. It didn't exist. Other parties did not exist in the rural areas, in the areas where the ANC was dominant, because they had given up, that those are ANC's territories. We are entering every territory.
Some analysts are saying that just as the DA, now that Jacob Zuma is out of office, the EFF is running out of ideas in terms of staying relevant and uppermost on people's minds. And to quote Ralph Matera, that you're recalibrating your radicalism in order to keep the attention of potential
Well,
voters.
I don't take him serious. I don't take any analyst in South Africa serious. They've never organized anything in their lives. Some of them have never organized a mere 21st birthday party for themselves or their children. So they know nothing about
But organization has nothing to do with engaging people on an intellectual level, and they're saying that part of how they're
you think
reading...
you're going to win elections through engagement intellectual level? We're talking about elections. Stick to the topic. You asked me about elections.
Yes.
I'm answering the elections. And elections have got nothing to do with engagement at the level of intellectual engagement. We can do that with Ralph Matera and render him useless. I mean, he's got no superior logic. I'm saying to you, when it comes to elections, analysts' ideas are useless because they've got no idea what they're talking about. Remember that the mobilization and electoral politics, the majority of the strategies are not even documented. And therefore, Matera is bookish like that. Majority of them are bookish like that. They've got no practical example and experience of what it means to organize the ground. How does the EFF become irrelevant? Because the EFF is in the lips of everybody since Ramaphosa came in. Ramaphosa is not to the EFF. He's the most irrelevant person. Actually, Zuma is destabilizing him to the latter. I think his biggest problem is Zuma. So we are smooth sailing because Zuma is doing the work for us. So why should we be worried about Ramaphosa? Ramaphosa is over-exaggerated. I like Ramaphosa because he wants to remain Mr. Clean. And the only way Mr. Clean is becoming undecisive. You don't take any decision. You just stay out of decisions. And in the absence of not taking any decision, we come in and provide leadership. Look at that parliament. We've been leading in terms of ideas. The Ramaphosa, the over-celebrated Ramaphosa, has been tailing behind the EFF. The land issue, we are now on Reserve Bank. There are so many issues we've tabled in parliament with your Ramaphosa coming after us. So Ramaphosa is no threat to the EFF at all.
Do you see the EFF or your party as an organization that promotes identity politics or that finds a huge part of how it functions around identity politics?
Identity politics are not created by the EFF. We found them here. People are identified according to their race, according to their relationship to the means of production. You're either white class or you're bourgeois. You're either black, or if you are black, you're either African or you're white. So we found them here. All we're saying is that South Africa has been divided along those lines, and with Africans being the most oppressed people. And our priority, at least for now, is on the liberation of Africans in particular, so that they become equal partners in this country.
So as it stands, is the EFF a party for African people?
No, it's for everyone. Liberation of everyone oppressed in South Africa, blacks in general and Africans in particular. That has always been our vocab, because in the movement where we come from and in the traditions where we come from, the priority has always been the Africans, who are the most oppressed. Sure. And in the Africans, it's women, because women suffered triple oppression. One, because they are women. Two, because they're African. Three, because they are a working class. And when you put emphasis on women, it doesn't mean you are sexist. You are just considering the historical facts which have to be taken into consideration.
But what about those who feel that? What about those who feel that sometimes the approach alienates people of other races?
No, it doesn't alienate them. For instance, let's take the recent issue of Floyd, where he says Momo undermines Africans in the Department of Treasury. He's putting emphasis on the fact that there's from time to time a temptation from our Indian brothers and sisters to want to think they're superior to Africans. It is not of their own creation. Apartheid instilled that mentality, and we have to confront it and do away with it. We're not alienating anyone. We're just speaking truth, and that truth has to be confronted as it is.
But the fact that it's received as a means of exclusion, does that not
No, it's
change?
not received like that. Our people understand it very well. You want to tell me about the rented mob, which want to distort exactly what we stand for and what Floyd said. I really don't care about the feelings of those ones.
Who's the rented mob?
No, I've seen a rented mob here attacking Floyd on the things that he didn't say. And we all knew what Floyd had actually said. So, and actually Floyd said it much, much more politely. I would have been worse than Floyd if I was there.
All right. In terms of the 2019 elections, how well are you expecting that the EFF will do?
EFF will do very well. I think EFF will emerge victorious. We are now busy with launching our regions. We've experienced some few problems in some few regions. We're dealing with them. And I'm happy that before we even launch our manifesto, we'll be having structures in all corners of South Africa, which is a guarantee that EFF will actually perform much better.
Percentage numbers?
Well, I don't want to predict the unpredictable, because democracy has got no guarantees. It can give birth to a monster. So we actually hope for the best, to get more than 50% and govern South Africa and govern it much better. If we don't take South Africa, we hope to take certain provinces and give practical example of what the EFF government will offer to the entire country.
All right, thanks for coming on to As It Happens Tonight. The leader of the EFF, Julius Malema. It brings us to an end of tonight's edition of As It Happens. I'm Cathy Mohlahlana.